life and how I ended up in Battersea and what I love about Battersea. But there's one thing that I feel quite passionately about, and I talk a lot about it on social media and in my day-to-day life. It's something I'm very open about, and that is mental health. I think it's an incredibly important topic to talk about, and I think it's incredibly important for people who have experienced challenges with their mental health to be open and honest about that journey. It's one of the ways that we can break down the stigma that is associated with mental illness. And it's the one way that every single one of us can tackle that challenge. So I've been very open about my story, and I suppose I wanted to take this opportunity to share a little bit about myself and my mental health journey. And maybe even if it just touches one person out there, I think that is a mission achieved. Just to preempt this by saying I'm not a mental health professional. I am someone who has experienced mental health issues, and I'm talking about my experience and what I found helped me. And anyone else who's out there listening to this who feels like they need a helping hand, I'd say reach out to a friend, reach out to a parent, reach out to a neighbor, reach out to your doctor, reach out to one of the charities that work in the space, like the Samaritans and Mind UK. They're phenomenal organizations, and they really are out there to help with professional advice. So I think that's one thing I would insist on, and it's one thing that started my journey to healing, was to reach out and to stop trying to cope with it on my own. I have suffered, and I hate the word suffer because I do think that it kind of paints quite a dark, bleak picture of mental illness, but I have had depression for most of my adult life, repeated episodes throughout my adult life, with a number of diagnoses sort of littering my 20s and my 30s. Couple of incidents of burnout where I've just pushed myself too hard and ended up not being able to get myself out of bed in the morning for days on end. And then about 4 years ago, it came to what I think of as ground zero, hitting the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of my experience. And I had a breakdown, probably triggered by issues at work. But it resulted in me being admitted to a psychiatric clinic in Cape Town in South Africa, and it resulted in me being diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder for the first time. So I not only had a major episode of depression, but I had a double whammy, and I had generalized anxiety disorder, which is something that is with you every single day of your life going forward. It's at the time, it felt like a bit of a death sentence. I was like, oh, I'm broken. How do I fix myself? How do I move on? How do I cure anxiety? How do I cure depression? And at the time, it was really hard to see out of the black hole that I was in. But through intensive therapy and a bunch of other techniques, I kind of started learning how to live with a condition like anxiety and a condition like depression. And I think that was the biggest light bulb moment for me in my journey of healing, was that you need to accept those parts of you. So I accepted my illness, I accepted my diagnoses, and decided that they weren't going to stop me from living my best life. I just had to learn coping mechanisms. I had to understand what triggered my panic attacks and triggered my anxiety. I had to understand how to cope with those triggers and how to get through those panic attacks, and how to just continually grow and lead a really rich, fulfilled life, despite the fact, or maybe even because of the fact, that I had two mental health illnesses diagnosed. It's been, the last 4 years have been a journey of learning, and sometimes I get it right and sometimes I get it wrong. Just recently starting a new job, that triggered my anxiety in a major way. But thank goodness to the years of counseling and coaching and growth that I've done, I haven't fallen to pieces. I am learning to embrace the process, to allow myself to feel uncomfortable, to learn as I go, to allow myself to be a beginner. As a perfectionist, that is something that is so foreign to me, because I expect myself to be an expert from day one. And starting this new job, I'm allowing myself not to know anything. And that's wonderful. Also in my toolbox of coping mechanisms is exercise. I love exercising. When I was first diagnosed with depression and anxiety, I worked through a lot of anguish by running, and ended up running a marathon, my first marathon, my only marathon. I will run another one day. Meditation works for me, mindfulness works for me, yoga doesn't work for me, and I think that is something else that I learned through this process, is that no treatment, no tool applies to everyone. You have to put your own toolbox together of mental health coping mechanisms. So you can experiment with meditation and you decide that's not for you, but actually you find high intensity interval training really helps you deal with your mental health conditions and your angsts and all that sort of stuff. So put that into your toolbox. And maybe journaling works for you, maybe mindfulness works for you. You've got to find your own collection of coping mechanisms. And so I think, just to end, I'd say mental illness is not a bad thing. It shouldn't be seen as a black hole. It should not be seen as the end. In fact, I see any sort of diagnosis like this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn more about yourself, to understand what makes you tick, and to embrace who you are as a truly unique, multi-dimensional person. A person who is flawed, but a person who's beautiful as well. And so I'd say to anyone listening, if you are struggling at the moment, and a lot of us are struggling because we're just coming out of 2 years of COVID intensity and insanity, and I'd just say reach out to someone, whether that's a friend or a doctor or an organization like the one I mentioned now. I just want to say there is help. You just have to put your hand up and ask for it.